Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you had spectacular weekends and that you are now having outstanding Mondays. I hope that you played both of our Week 0 gambling bets, because if you did, the Blood Bank Guarantee cashed. And also, Arizona and Hawaii, the over hit with ease. Nice little 2-0 start. Thanks, Week 0. We'll get to Week 0 here in a moment, but a lot to get to. Want to talk about Andrew Luck retiring, the continuing fallout. Florida-Miami was the highest-rated college football game in 3 years on ESPN, college football game, that is. Arizona, tough position to be in, losing on the road as a double-digit favorite in Hawaii. Desmond Howard makes a joke, and guess what? People seem to take it as a joke. Is this a good sign? And Rory McIlroy wins $15 million to end the PGA. Big time, second FedEx Cup win for him. But we begin with the Andrew Luck news and the Andrew Luck story and the Andrew Luck bombshell that dropped on Saturday night while we were all watching, most of us anyway, Florida-Miami. I had to check my Twitter feed about 20 different times to verify that Adam Schefter actually had the breaking news that he did, and the fallout has continued to be monumental. Now, there are a lot of different angles that I want to hit it from, but I want to hit you first with the gambling fallout. How much of a difference does it make for the Colts to go from Andrew Luck to Jacoby Brissett? Here are the latest numbers that I have seen according to OddsShark. Super Bowl, 16-1 for the Indianapolis Colts to 50-1. AFC South, from even odds to win the AFC South to plus 450, worst in the division. Win total, 9.5 down to 6.5. And the Week 1 line against the Chargers has gone from 3 all the way up to nearly 10, nearly a touchdown difference. That's one player. If you ever wondered the monumental difference between a top 5 quarterback and an average quarterback, that is an unbelievable move to see the Colts fall that far, that fast, based on Andrew Luck's decision. Now, there has been a lot of fallout from Andrew Luck's decision, so let's talk about some of that. First of all, a lot of people have ripped the Colts fan base for the way they responded to Andrew Luck deciding to retire. I want to dive into this in an interesting way. Think about who's still in the stadium in the fourth quarter of a preseason game when that news comes down and everybody starts looking at their phone. There's a lot of diehard Indianapolis Colts fans there still in the fourth quarter of a preseason game. And they are obsessively committed to their team. And boom, they suddenly find out that a guy who appears to be healthy at 29 years old is going to retire. I think you have to factor in a couple of things here. I think you have to factor in 2 years ago when Colt fans were told that they were going to be able to have Andrew Luck play for him, and then he set out the entire season. And also, I think you have to factor in the fact that the Colts fans don't really trust their management or their ownership when it comes to being honest with them. This was a complete bombshell that was dropped on them 2 weeks before the season starts. Now, so I understand the immediate emotional response from the Colts fan base. That's because most people out there don't care about anything other than the way their team or their favorite players make them feel. All right, this is important. A lot of athletes don't understand this. A lot of players and coaches and everybody else don't understand this. Most fans view their fandom as a way to burnish their overall good feelings about themselves. They don't care, by and large, about the off-the-field decisions that players make. That's how Ray Rice gets cheered when he shows up for training camp. That's how Tyreek Hill gets cheered when he shows up for training camp. That's why so many fans will believe the head coach if the head coach is winning, no matter what the evidence suggests. Fans are fanatics, and they are committed to their feelings, all right? They don't oftentimes behave in a very logical fashion. And so this was a natural reaction, emotion-based, which is what social media is founded on, where everybody just immediately reacts and they're angry over the fact that the Colts star player has just taken the Colts from a Super Bowl contender to a rebuilding franchise potentially in the space of one decision. Here's a second. So I understand why people would emotionally respond the way they did as they get that news inside the stadium and see Andrew Luck standing there on the sideline. I think it's unlikely that you would get a lot of people cheering Andrew Luck as he walks off the field in that situation. Which brings me to my second part. Who leaked this information to Adam Schefter while Andrew Luck was still on the sideline cheering for his teammates before this news actually went public? Think about that for a minute. I don't blame Adam Schefter for breaking this news story at all. That's his job. It's a massive scoop. It's one of the biggest scoops of his entire career. But why in the world, if somebody is looking out for Andrew Luck, would they want to take this story out of his hands and break the story while the game was going on and he was standing on the sideline? He was scheduled to have a press conference on Sunday. Think about how different the news might have been received if on Sunday news had broken and then Andrew Luck has a press conference instead of this hurried manner in which he suddenly stands there in a long-sleeve Colts shirt and announces that he is going to retire. Third, there has been I am curious how this news got to Adam Schefter and why it came out the way that it did at this point in time. Third, Doug Gottlieb is a friend of mine. His tweet goes viral a billion different directions, and he ends up being crushed all weekend long for his opinion about Andrew Luck. I don't agree with it, but I also don't think that it's the most ridiculous opinion that's ever existed in the history of mankind. I read it. I was like, man, he's going to get crushed for this, but it's not like it was somehow a totally without precedent tweet, right? There are all the time, every time an athlete retires, whether it's Rob Gronkowski, whether it is Barry Sanders, whether it's Calvin Johnson, people who retire when they are young are frequently ripped for deciding to retire while they are young. Now, the thing that I would say about this in general is I think it's an amazing position to be in, to have $100 million and just be able to do whatever you want for the rest of your life and be 29 years old. That's what I think is being overlooked to a large extent in this analysis. Once you make that kind of money, and I think it's a fascinating question, how many people would still show up and go to work if they had made $100 million in their lives? The fact that you have that option, when you get to $100 million level, effectively you're working for your kids or your grandkids. You have to really love your job to continue to do it, especially if you are not very healthy and you don't need the money anymore. It has to be something innate that drives you, and Andrew Luck didn't have that drive anymore. Now, the reason why the Colts paid him out is because I think Andrew Luck will come back. I think what will happen is he will take a year off, he'll sit around, his body will start to feel amazing, and he'll realize, wait a minute, I have this incredible gift to play quarterback at the very highest level in the NFL. And I think that gift will be hard for him to walk away from forever. Maybe he will, but we've never seen anybody truly go out on top like this. Andrew Luck just posted his best season as a pro. When Barry Sanders left, when Rob Gronkowski left, when Calvin Johnson left, all of them were already beginning the decline in their career. Andrew Luck, 39 touchdowns, second most in the NFL last year, took the Colts and a first-year head coach into the mix of potentially advancing to the Super Bowl. I just think it's an incredibly interesting decision. And the analogy I would make here is guys get burned out, okay? And it happens, ironically enough, with Andrew Luck in Stanford all the time with tech guys, right? If you found a company and you dominate for years and years and you drive and you go as hard as you possibly can, and then one day you realize that you're sitting on a mountain of cash, you might not have any energy left, you might not have the same drive that you did before, and what do tech guys who make a ton of money often do? They disappear for a year. They take a sabbatical. They work on their work-life balance, and they come back energized. I think there's a good chance that Andrew Luck comes back and plays again. I think there is a solid possibility of it potentially happening. And so whether or not it will, I'm blown away by the number of people who think that there's absolutely no chance he will. High-level athletes all the time, in boxing, for instance, who are at the peak of their game, say I'm retiring, and then they come back for more money. I think Andrew Luck could end up doing the same thing, and ultimately it's his decision. I wish him the best in making it, but he's got such a unique skill set and talent, and every year the NFL protects quarterbacks more, that if anything, I think he could feel better about coming back and playing again. Now, larger context. I think it's funny that people are like, oh, he's going to go back to the XFL. Guys, girls, he's under contract to the Colts. He can't go anywhere and play football other than to them. So if he decides to come back and play, that's his choice. He has that opportunity. But again, the impact in the NFL, in the AFC South in particular with the conjunction of the injury to Lamar Miller, is massive. And so I think this is going to be intriguing to see how it plays out. I hope to one day, by the time I am 45 or 50, have so much money in the bank that I no longer have to work either, and I can decide what I want to do based on sheer money not factoring in at all. There's tons of people out there today who go into jobs that they hate. How many people keep going into work once they win the lottery? Effectively, Andrew Luck has won the lottery. I'm curious to see exactly what he ends up doing. Did you watch Florida-Miami? I loved week 0 in college football. I wanted to become a trend. I wanted to go all day long. The only flaw I thought for week 0 was we didn't have a game kicking off until 7:10 p.m. Eastern. Okay? I am honestly of the opinion that we need week 0 to start at noon and go all day long. And if you're wondering what the impact was for week 0, ESPN posted its highest college football rating in 3 years for the Florida-Miami game. There was a huge demand for week 0 in college football. Fans were ready to turn the page from the awful NFL preseason games and get ready for actual games that counted, even though Florida and Miami, neither one, played very well at all. Miami at least could point to starting Jaron Williams, a redshirt freshman quarterback who was dominated and sacked 10 times. It's hard to expect for him to play that well. But Florida, I am not sold on Felipe Franks. I think Felipe Franks is a really, really, really poor man's version of Tim Tebow and Dak Prescott, two great quarterbacks that Dan Mullen has had to run in the SEC before. The only thing that Felipe Franks does well, in my opinion, is when the Florida Gators get down near a goal line situation, he runs the ball out of the shotgun as a quarterback incredibly well. He's hard to stop. He's big, he's strong, and he's fast in those goal line and in those short yardage situations. I think he is Tim Tebow and Dak Prescott like. But this guy can't read a defense. This guy makes awful decisions, such as the interception that he threw with 4.5 minutes to go in this game that left Steve Spurrier with that quizzical look on his face. May well have been a bad decision by Dan Mullen to let him throw the ball there, but he is not a solid quarterback. I also don't like the way he carries himself on the field. He's a junior now. He started a lot of games at Florida. You can't punt the football into the crowd after you manage to survive against Miami. You didn't play too well. He gets the emotion overshadowing him. He is not playing as a cerebral signal caller. I'm not sold on him. I'm not sold on the Florida Gators as a result. I think they probably have a very good defense. Hard to know for sure because I don't think Miami's offense is that good. I think the Gators have some skill position talent. I'm not sold on their offensive playmaking. It was awful tackling on both sides of the ball. I loved, by the way, the 305 turnover chain from Miami. I thought that was pretty fantastic, but I am not sold at all on Felipe Franks' long-range trajectory as a big-time playmaker at the quarterback position. So, as a result, I believe that I'm going to have to first wipe a man out here. I believe that Florida's ceiling is likely 9-3, maybe 8-4. This is not a top 10 team. We did not see a very good performance from the Florida Gators on Saturday, but I love the idea of week 0. Arizona. Last year, Arizona started off the season with a wipeout, and they got absolutely crushed. I believe it was by Houston, if I'm not mistaken. This year, late at night, out in Hawaii, Khalil Tate was scrambling, trying to score a touchdown on the final play of the game from 30 yards out. A defensive lineman followed him the whole length of the field, made a tackle right in front of the goal line. They stopped him, Kevin Dyson style, at the 1-yard line. Would have been interesting to see whether or not Kevin Sumlin would have gone for 2 there or not. The Pac-12 conference continues to not distinguish itself and to be a pale approximation of the SEC, of the Big Ten, of the ACC, and of the Big 12. Last year was a disastrous year for the Pac-12. I don't frankly see it getting a lot better. This weekend, the Oregon game against Auburn is almost a must-win for the Pac-12. I hope you had the over in that game. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Kevin Sumlin as he comes back stateside to get ready for the Pac-12 season. The Pac-12 South is wide open right now. I would make Utah the favorite to win the Pac-12 South. I think Washington, Washington State, and Oregon are all decent in the Pac-12 North, but I don't think USC is going to be very good this year. I think UCLA is still a year away. By the way, they're 3-point underdogs for their road game against Cincinnati on Thursday night. I think that Auburn gets it done, but I think the Pac-12 South is wide open. That's a must-win game suddenly for Oregon and the Pac-12. Did you see the game day live from Disney World? Funny part of the show, I thought. I think it was Reese Davis says to Desmond Howard, who is a Michigan fan, when is Michigan finally going to beat Ohio State? And Desmond Howard says, is Desmond Howard going to have to choke a bitch, right? Famous line from the Dave Chappelle skit. If you guys remember Wayne Brady, it's one of the funniest skits in one of the funniest shows that has ever existed in sketch comedy history. That's a funny line. I have absolutely no issues with it at all. And I actually see this as a continued trajectory of positivity in that sports Twitter is starting to learn to be able to take a joke. This wasn't in any way meant to be a negative. If you haven't seen the Chappelle Show skit, the idea is that Wayne Brady actually has an incredible dark side. That Wayne Brady, who is the least offensive comedian on the planet, could play against type and against character and be such a terrifying person in that skit. It's a hysterical skit if you haven't seen it. Desmond Howard, similarly, is not exactly a threatening guy. So when he says that, he's playing into the same element as Wayne Brady. It's a funny line, okay? I hope that ESPN and sports media in general will allow jokes to move back in the trajectory of actually being permissible, and that context will matter. And that people won't sit around looking to be offended all day long, every day. Some people are saying if Kirk Herbstreit or if Lee Corso or if Reese Davis had said it, people would react differently. I hope that's not the case. I hope that the precedent we are establishing is everybody should be treated the same, context should matter, and when you say something and what your intent is should govern more than whether somebody grabs their pearls and falls down and starts crying, okay? So that in and of itself is my hope in situations such as these, that the country can chill out and that we can enjoy it. Having said this is really funny. It's really funny that he said it at Disney World. Of all places for you to make that analogy, the Disney World place is really, really funny. Having said that, Lee Corso has dropped a bunch of F-bombs on this show over the course of College Game Day's history. It's an unscripted, fun, interactive show. As someone who appears on an unscripted, fun, I hope, interactive show on both the radio every day and on television every day, I can tell you that every single word that comes out of my mouth is not perfect. I do around 5 hours of live media every single day. And as a result, sometimes I say things that don't come out right either, or that some people are upset by. That was a funny joke. The intent was solid, and I hope it's evidence of a precedent whereby we give people the benefit of the doubt going forward and treat everybody the same. And for people out there who want to argue that Desmond Howard is being treated differently, precedent matters. If you are talent, people can now point to this and say, you didn't do anything to Desmond Howard. How are you going to do something to me? I think in this situation, it's a good result, and that ESPN did the right thing. By the way, Desmond Howard kind of apologized, but it wasn't really necessary. Finally, Rory McIlroy has made $15 million this weekend. I feel like a lot of people didn't notice this. $15 million Rory McIlroy won in the FedEx. What an incredible accomplishment. He's now won the FedEx twice, and he's over $80 million in career earnings on the course, one of only 4 golfers to ever do that. Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Vijay Singh, I think surprises a lot of people there, and now Rory McIlroy. Only 4 golfers to ever go over $80 million on course earnings. Of course, this doesn't even consider how much money he made off the course. That is, I think, a great thing that the PGA is doing. I love that they altered their calendar this year. I paid attention a lot to Rory versus Brooks down the stretch, and man, what an unbelievable performance to win $15 million. I love the way the PGA has set it up now with the Players in March, with the Masters in April, with the PGA in May, with the U.S. Open in June, and with the British Open in July. This was an awful lot of fun to watch, and finish it off with the PGA in August. All these guys, huge percentages of them, who play on the golf course, on the PGA Tour, the Americans for sure, are huge college football fans. I know those guys are excited to roll back into what should be, I think, a pretty entertaining college football season. It's college football week 1. I can't wait to give you all my gambling picks. In fact, if you're an Outkick VIP, you've already got them. You can sign up, get an autographed copy of my book or a t-shirt. Everybody new gets one. All the picks are up on the website right now. 15 of them up on the Outkick VIP board. You can dive in there and go ahead and get your bets in. Otherwise, as we've done for years, all my college football picks will be up every single Wednesday. We'll be live on Lock It In, 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. Put it on FS1. I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Kisses. Oh, and go listen and watch Wins and Losses with Rachel Bonetta. It's fantastic this week. See you guys. I don't know what's going on here. It's harder to stop the broadcast than it used to be. All right. Love you guys, Facebook. See y'all.